Maccabean Rishon, also called Maccabees chapter 1. And it happened, after that Alexander son of Philip, Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persian and Medi, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Yavin, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew kings of the earth, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, inasmuch as the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted as his heart, and his heart was lifted up, and he gathered a mighty strong host, and ruler over countries, and nations, and kings, and became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick, and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as honorable, and had been brought with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them, while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then died. And his servants bore rulers every one in his place. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them wicked brutes, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, sons of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137 years of the kingdom of Yahudiym. And those days went there out of Yashar'el wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and cut a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. Since we have departed from them, we have been in much sorrow. For this device pleased them well, and certain of the people were so forward therein, that they went to the king, and gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Yerushalayim according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to the mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Mizraim, that he might have dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Mizraim with a great multitude, with chariots, and elephants, and horsemen, and great navy, and made wars against Ptolemy, king of Mizraim. But Ptolemy was afraid of him, and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got to the strong cities in the land of Mizraim, and he took spoils thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Mizraim, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Yashar'el and Yerushalayim with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, the menorah of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censer of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold, and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went unto his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Yashar'el, in every place where they were, so that the princes and the elders mourned. The virgin and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chambers was in heaviness. And the land also was moved from the habitation thereof, and all the houses of Yaakov were covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Yahudah, and came unto Yerushalayim with a great multitude, and spoke peaceably words unto them, but all was deceit. But when they had given him precedent he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Yashar'el. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. Then built their city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored it also with armor and victuals. And when they had gathered together the spoil of Yerushalayim, they laid them up there, and so became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Yashar'el. Thus they shed innocent blood in every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it, inasmuch as the inhabitants of Yerushalayim fled because of them. Whereupon the city was made a habitant of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. And her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like the wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths, her Shabbats into reproach, her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was the dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom, to all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. And all the heathens agreed according to the commandments of the king. Yea, many also of Yashar'el consented to the religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath, the Shabbat. But the king had sent letters by messengers unto Yerushalayim and the cities of Yahudah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings, and sacrifice, and drink offering, in the temple, and they should profane the Shabbats of feast days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and Asherah poles and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beast, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanations, to the end they might forget the Torah, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever will not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, he shall die. In the selfsame manner wrote he to this whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commending them the cities of Yahudah to sacrifice, city by city. Then many of the people were gathered into them, to wit everyone that forsook the Torah. And so they committed evils in the land, and drove Yashar'el into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for help. Now the 15th day of the month Kislev, and 140 years, they set up an abomination of the desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Yahudah on every side, and burnt incense of the doors at their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the Sephirahim of the Torah, which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any sefer of the covenant, or if any committed to the Torah, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. Thus did they by their authority unto Yashar'el every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25 days of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of Elohim, in which time according to the commandments they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and they hanged their infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Yashar'el were fully resolved, and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they rather die and they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died, and there was very great wrath upon Yashar'el. Hallelujah. Maccabean Rishon, also called Maccabees, chapter 2. In those days arose Matthiyahu the son of Yahuchanan, the son of Shimeon, and the priests of the sons of Yariv, from Yerushalayim, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, Yahuchanan called Cadis, Shimeon called Thasis, and Yahudah, who was called Maccabee, Eleazar called Avarian, and Jonathan, whose surname was Apphus. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Yahudah in Yerushalayim, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people, and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, her young men with swords of the enemy. What nation has not had a part in her kingdom, and gotten of her spoils? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is becoming a bondservant. And, behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory, is laid waste, and the other people have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer? Then Matthiyahu and his sons rent their clothes and put the sackcloth, and mourning very sore. And in the meanwhile the king's officers, which has compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modin, and made them sacrifice. And when many of Yashar'el came unto them, Matthiyahu also and his sons came together, and answered the king's officers, and said to Matthiyahu on this wise, You are a ruler, an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now, therefore, come you first, and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathens have done, yea, and the men of Yahudah also. And such has remained at Yerushalayim. So shall you and your house be in the number of the king's friends. And you and your children shall be honored with silver and gold, and many rewards. Then Matthiyahu answered and spoke with a loud voice, Though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from faith of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Far be it that we should forsake the Torah and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words, to go from our faith, neither to the right hand or to the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Yahudiym in the sight of all the sacrifices on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which things when Matthiyahu saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his mind trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. And also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the Torah of Elohim, like as the Pinnacle did unto Zimri, the son of Shalom. And Matthiyahu cried out throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whosoever is zealous of the Torah, and maintains the covenant, let him follow me. And he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that ever they had in the city. Many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, both they and their children and their women and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. Now when it was told the king's servants and the hosts that was in Yerushalayim in the city of David, a certain man who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places of the wilderness. They pursued after them a great number, and having overtaken them, they camped against them, and made war against them on the Shabbat. And they said unto them, Let that which ye have done hereto suffice, and come forth, and do according to the commandments of the king, and he shall live. But they said, We will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandments, to profane the Shabbat. So they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast there a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they laid hid, but said, Let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us, that he put us to death wrongfully. So they rose up against them in the battle on the Shabbat, and they slew them with their women and their children and their cattle, to the number of 1,000 people. Now when Mattheyahu and his friends understood thereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, If we will also do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives, and Torah against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. In that time therefore they decreed, saying, Whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Shabbat, we will fight against him, neither will we die all, as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. Then came there unto him the company of Hasidians, who were mighty men of Yashar'el, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the Torah. Also all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were stayed unto them. So they joined their forces, and smote sinful men in their anger, and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathens for help. Then Mattheyahu and his friends went round about, and pulled down the altars, and what children soever they found within the coasts of Yashar'el uncircumcised, those they circumcised violently. They pursued also after the proud men, and the work prospered in their hand. So they recovered the Torah out of the hands of the other people, and out of the hands of kings, neither suffered they the sinners to triumph. Now when the time drew near that Mattheyahu should die, he said unto his sons, Now has pride and rebuke gotten strength, in the time of destruction, and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the Torah, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, so shall he receive great honor and everlasting names. Was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Yourself in the time of his distress kept the commandments, and was made lords to Mizraim. Peniach, our father, and being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. YAHUSHA, for fulfilling the words, was made a judge in Yashar'el. Caleb, for bearing witness before the assembly, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. Eliyahu, for being zealous and fervent for the Torah, was taken up into heaven. Kaniyahu, Azariyahu, Mishael, my believing, were saved out of the flame. Daniel, and his innocency was delivered from the mouth of lions. And thus considered he throughout all ages, that none that put their trust in him shall be overcome. Fear not them the words of the sinful men, for his glory shall be dung and worms. Today he shall be lifted up, and tomorrow he shall not be found, because he is returned into his dust. His thought is become nothing. Wherefore, he, my sons, be violent, show yourself men in the behalf of the Torah, for by it shall he obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Shimeon is a man of counsel. Give ear unto him always. He shall be a father unto you. As for YAHUDA Maccabee, he has been mighty and strong, even from his youth up. Let him be your captain, and fight the battle of the people. Take also unto you all those that observe the Torah, and avenge he the wrong of your people. Recompense fully the heathen, and take heed to the commandments of the Torah. So he blessed them, and was gathered to his fathers. And he died in the 146 years. And his sons buried him in the sepulchre of his fathers at Modin. And all Yashar'el made great lamentation for him. Hallelujah. Maccabean Richmond, also called Maccabees chapter 3. Then his son YAHUDA, called Maccabee, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Yashar'el. So he got his people great honor, and put on breastplate as a giant, and gird his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword, and his axe like a lion's whelp roaring for his prey. For he pursues the wicked, and soughed them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Therefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because Yeshua prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings, and made Yaakov glad with his axe, and his memorial is blessed forever. Moreover, he went through the cities of Yahudah, destroying the wicked out of them, and turning away wrath from Yashar'el, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth. And he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Then Apollonius gathered the other people together, and the great host out of Shemaron, to fight against Yashar'el. Which things when YAHUDA perceives, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore YAHUDA took their spoils, and Apollonius' swords also, and therewith he fought all his life long. Now then, Seron, the prince of the army of Aram, heard say that YAHUDA had gathered unto him a multitude of company of the faithful, and go out with him to war. He said, I will get me a name and honor and the kingdom, for I will go fight with YAHUDA, and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. So he made him ready to go up, and there went with him a mighty host of the wicked to help him to be avenged of the children of Yashar'el. And when he came near to the goings of Beit Sharon, YAHUDA went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming to meet him, said unto YAHUDA, how shall we be able, being few, to fight against so great multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day? Unto whom YAHUDA answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few, and with the Elohim of heaven it is all one, to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. For the victory of a battle stands not in the multitude of a host, but strength comes from heaven. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our women and our children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives in our Torah. Wherefore YAHUAH himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leaps suddenly unto them. And so Seron and his hosts was overthrown before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beit Sharon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them. And the remnant fled into the land of Philistia. Then began the fear of Yahudah and his brethren, and exceeding great dread, that to fall upon the nations round about them. Inasmuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talk of the battles of Yahudah. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasuries, and gave his soldiers paid for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasury failed, and that the tributes of the country were small, because of the dissension of the plague, which had brought upon them the land, taking away the Torah, which has been of old, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounds above the king that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take a tributes of the countries, and to gather much money. So he left Lycia, a nobleman, and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river of Perath unto the borders of Mizraim, and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, and also concerning them that dwelled in Yahudah in Yerushalayim, to wit, that he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Yashar'el, and the remnant of Yerushalayim, to take away their memorial from that place, and that he should place strangers in all their quarters, and divide their land by lot. So the king took half of the forces that remained, and departed from Antioch, his royal city, 140 years. And having passing the river of Perath, he went through the high countries. Then Lycia chose Ptolemy, the sons of Dorymanus, Nicanor, and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends. And with them he sent 40,000 footmen, and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Yahudah, to destroy it, as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power, and came and pitched by Yemen, and the plain of country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came unto the camp to buy children of Yashar'el for slaves. A power also of Aram, and the land of Philistia, joined themselves unto them. Now when Yahudah and his brethren saw that misery were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandments to destroy the people, and utterly abolish them, they said one to another, Let us restore the decayed fortune of our people, and let us fight for our people in the sanctuary. Then was the assembly gathered together, that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion. Now Yerushalayim lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in and out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and aliens kept the stronghold. The heathens had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Yaakov, and the pipe with the harp ceased. Wherefore Yashar'el assembled themselves together, and came to Mitzpah, over against Yerushalayim. For in Mitzpah was the place where they prayed aforetimes in Yashar'el. Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes, and laid open the sefer of the Torah, wherein the heathens had sought to paint in the likeness of their images. They brought also the priest's garment, and the first fruit of the tithe, and Nazarium, they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. Then cried they with a loud voice towards heavens, saying, What shall we do with these? And whither shall we carry them away? For your sanctuary is trodden down and profane, and your priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the heathens are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us, and you know. Also shall we be able to stand against them, except you, O Elohim, be our help. Then sounded they with the shofars, and cried with a loud voice. And after this Yahudah ordains captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens, and has for search as were building houses, and had betrothed women, and were planting vineyard, and were fearful. Those he commanded that they should return, every man to his own house, according to the Torah. So the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Yemen. And Yahudah said, Arm yourselves, and be violent men, and see that he be in readiness against the morning, that he may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us to destroy us in our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people in our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of Elohim is in heaven, so let him do. Hallelujah. Maccabean Rishon, also called Maccabees chapter 4. Then took Gorgias 5,000 footmen and 1,000 of the best horsemen, and removed out of the camp by night, and to the end he might rush in upon the camp of the Yahudiym, and smite them suddenly. And the men of the fortress were his guides. Now when Yahudah heard therefore, he himself removed, and the violent men with him, that he might smite the king's army which was in Yemen. While as yet the forces were dispersed from the camp, and in the mean season came Gorgias by night, and in the camp of Yahudah. When he found no men there, he sought them in the mountains, but said he, These fellows flee from us. But as soon as it was day, Yahudah showed himself in the plain with 3,000 men, who nevertheless had neither armor nor swords in their minds. And they saw the camp of the heathen, that it was strong and well harnessed, and compassed round about the horsemen. And these were expert of wars. And said Yahudah to the men that was with him, Fear ye not their multitude, neither be afraid of their assaults. Remember how our fathers were delivered in the Red Sea, when Pharaoh pursued them with an army. Now therefore let us cry unto heaven, if peradventure YAHUAH will have mercy upon us, and remember the covenant of our fathers, to destroy this host before our face this day, that so all the heathens may know that there is one who delivers and saves Yashar'el. And the strangers lifted up their eyes, and saw them coming over against them. Wherefore they went out of the camp to battle,
But they that were with Yahudah sounded their shofars. So they joined battle. The heathens, being discomfited, fled into the plain. Howbeit all the hindmost of them were slain with the sword, for they pursued them unto Gaza, and unto the plains of Edom, and Ashdod, the Yavneel, so that there were slain of them upon 3,000 men. This done, Yahudah returned against with his hosts from pursuing them, and said to the people, Be not greedy of the spoil, inasmuch as there is a battle before us, and Gorgias and his hosts are here by us in the mountains. But stand he now against our enemies, and overcome them, and after this he may boldly take the spoils. As Yahudah was yet speaking these words, there appeared a part of them looking out of the mountains, who when they perceived that the Yahudiym had put their hosts to flight, were burning the tents, for the smoke that was seen declared what was done. When therefore they perceived these things, they were sore afraid, and seeing also the host of Yahudah in the plain ready to fight, they fled every one into the land of the strangers. And Yahudah returned the spoil of the tent, where they got much gold and silvers and blue silk and purple of the sea and great riches. After this they went home and sung the song of thanksgiving and praised YAHUAH in heaven, because he is good, because his mercy endures forever. Thus Yashar'el had great deliverance that day. Now all the strangers that had escaped them came and told Elisha what had happened, and when he heard thereof, was confounded and discouraged, because neither such things as he would work done unto Yashar'el, nor such thing as the king commanded him were come to pass. The next year, therefore, following leaders gathered together 70,000 choice of men of foot, and 5,000 horsemen, that he might subdue them. So they came unto Edom, and pitched their tents in Beit Surah. And Yahudah met them with 10,000 men. And when he saw that the mighty army, he prayed and said, Blessed are you, O Savior of Yashar'el, who did quell the violence of the mighty men by the hand of your servant David, and gave the host of strangers into his hand of the Jonathan and the son of Shaul and his armor bearer. Shut up this army in the hand of your people Yashar'el, and let them be confounded in their power in horsemen. Make them to be of no courage, and cause the boldness of their strength to fall away, and let them quake at their destruction. Cast them down with the sword of them that love you. Cast them down with the sword of them that love you. And let all those that know your name praise you with thanksgiving. So they joined battle, and there were slain of the hosts of Elisha about 5,000 men. Even before them were they slain. Now when Elisha saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Yahudah soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or to die valiantly, he went into Antioch, and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again unto Yahudah. Then said Yahudah and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up and cleanse the dedication of the sanctuary. Upon this all the hosts assembled themselves together, and went up unto the Mount Sinai. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and all the altars profaned, and the gates burnt up, and shrubs growing, and the courts as a forest, and in one of the mountains, yea, the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes, and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, and fell down flat to the ground upon their faces, and blew an alarm with a shofar, and crying towards to heaven. And Yahudah appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests to blameless. He chose priests of blameless conversation, such as had pleasure in the Torah, who cleansed the sanctuary and poured out the defiled stones into the unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offering, which was profane, they thought it was best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Wherefore they pulled it down, and laid up the stones in the mountains of the temple of the convenience place, until there should come a prophet to show what should be done with them. Then they took whole stones according to the Torah, and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the menorah, and also burnt offerings and of the incense in the table. And upon the altar they burnt incense, and the lamps that were upon the menorah they lighted, that they might be giving light into the temple. Furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table, and spread out the vials, and finished all the works which they had begun to make. Now on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is called the month of Kiblev, in the 180 years, they rose up early in the morning, and offered sacrifices according to the Torah upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. Look at what time and what day the heathens had profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with songs, and cisterns, and harps, and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshipping and praised the Elohim of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days, and offered burnt offering with gladness, and sacrifices of deliverance and praise. They decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold, and with shields, and in the gates and in the chambers they renewed the hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, so that the reproach of the heathens was put away. Moreover, Yahudah and his brethren, with the whole assembly of Yashar'el, ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their seasons from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 25th day of the month Kiblev, with myrrh and gladness. In that time also they built up Mount Sinai with high walls and strong towers round about, lest the other people should come and tread it down, and they had done before. And they set their garrisons to keep it, fortified Beit Surah to guard it, that the people might have a defense against Edom. Hallelujah.